Hello there. This will be less of a playing video and more of an electronics geeking out video. I built a pedal, and that was my first experience doing so. I learned a lot, and I'm just here to share what I learned and hopefully help out anyone else who's building a pedal for the first time, specifically this one. So if you want to follow along, maybe learn a thing or two, please do so. Thank you. It all started here, the acquisition of the Area SB Ltd. Now, this is not a review of this bass. Perhaps that will come soon. What makes this bass so special is the electronics. We have two Alembic pickups, and we have one of their famous Q filters. So we're looking at volume, pickup balance, and the Q filter control. Here we are. It is 7:20 p.m. on a lovely evening here in Los Angeles. Still have plenty of sun, although I think we'll have sunset in 15-20 minutes or so. So anyhow, this is the A2Z pedal, or AQZ, if you want to read it that way. So this thing started because, like I said, I acquired the Area SB Ltd. It was something my buddy Alex turned me on to, and I'm kind of assuming that Alex started doing a little bit of research on the Alembic circuit, that Q filter I mentioned, and he just kind of asked me, hey, would you be willing to build this pedal? And I naively accepted because I was coming off of some soldering confidence with some much smaller projects that I accomplished lately. And I thought, what the hell? It'll be a learning experience. Was it ever a learning experience? So the Q filter, or the activator circuit, I've seen it labeled as the AE1 preamp board as well, is Alembic's super fancy tone control. That's the easiest way to put it. The Area Ltd has a simplified version of that circuit. It doesn't have the high, mid, low that most Alembics do, or some Alembics. I'm not an Alembic expert, I've never had one. So anyhow, Alex found this guy in Canada. He makes the JTEX Distiller, jtex.ca. His name's Jerry, real cool guy. I corresponded with him because I had some questions, more than a few, about the installation of this. So if at the end of this you think you might want to give this a shot, rest assured that he'll provide you very good support. So let's explain how this is put together, and probably the best way to do that is by showing you how much it cost, because that'll give us a good jumping off point into everything that's in the pedal. So here I have the back off. So we'll look at that again a bit later. And here are the guts. So basically what we're looking at here in this pedal, I don't know if you can see this because my printer printed this out rather faintly, but anyway, we have the distiller guts. So this is the JTEX Distiller product, which is this control board and this little sub board here that houses the 3-position switch. So those two things comprise the JTEX Distiller product. So that's the heart of the pedal. That's what makes the whole thing work. Then we have all the ancillaries here. So I purchased something called the Stomp Wizard. That's this. That's $16.69. Obviously, prices are probably going to change, especially in today's day and age. So the Stomp Wizard Easy 3 PDT. It's actually not a necessary product per se, but it just makes it way easier to put a pedal together, specifically because of this little board. I'll go through the parts in more detail in a bit. And that's made by Synthrotech. And you can get that on Amazon. We have the enclosure. So this handsome guy here, which is just a standard enclosure. Hammond 1590B, which I got from DigiKey. You're going to need a knob. Now we settled on, well, I should say Alex settled on this knob because he wanted to be able to move it with his foot as much as possible anyway. So that's that, $8.99. The Stomp Wizard, oops, excuse me there. The Stomp Wizard comes with a red LED. We thought it would be cool to kind of go with this more purple theme. So StewMac sells a violet LED. It just looks clear, but once it's on, it is violet. Incidentally, purple is a really hard color to do in LED. I mean, you can't do it really, so violet's as close as you're going to get, unless you're going to play around with putting, I don't know, a blue gel over a red LED. So that's only 90 cents. And you can get, you know, the LED somewhere else. I just happen to be doing another order with StewMac, so I just got it there. And then $12.92 here for the water slide paper, which I'm not showing you here, but the water slide decal paper is how we did these graphics here. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. So those are all the parts. As you can see, that comes out to about 222 bucks. And let's put that aside. So that's a nice little general overview of what is in this pedal. Now, there are definitely some gotchas. Let's just go through saving you time. If you decide to build this pedal, I'm going to save you a lot of time because, here, let me move this aside for a second. This is my crib sheet here, my cheat sheet, my little pedal Bible. Even though, you know, we may only be looking at 222 bucks to build this custom pedal, you have to factor in your time. Hopefully I can save you some of that valuable time by reading you off some of this cool acquired data I have here. Okay, so hole sizes. It's really useful to know how big to make all these holes. So for the LED, you're looking at 1/4 inch, 6 millimeter. I'm going to skip those two there for a second. The audio jacks here, you're going to use a 3/8 inch drill bit or a 10 millimeter bit. For the foot switch, the Synthrotech kit includes this white washer, which actually gives you some leeway. But if you want it to be exact so that only the part that needs to fit actually fits and, you know, the hole is not bigger than it should be, then you're going to do an 11/32 hole or 12 millimeter. For the DC power jack, 1/2 inch bit or 12.7 millimeters. I can't actually remember what size pot this was, but it was either 9/32 or 5/16. So either 7 millimeter or 8 millimeter. I just don't remember, I apologize. I would just start with a smaller size and inch your way up. Now, I did not do this, but I think it would have really helped if I had a stepped drill bit. I'll link a graphic of one right now. From what I've heard, those carve away the metal, whereas with the twist drill bit, they can catch. And it's really scary when you're using that 1/2 inch bit and it catches when you're drilling into metal. I wish I had that stepped drill bit. I made it work without it, but hey. Speaking of things you might need, well, these are things you absolutely must have. Gotta have a soldering iron. Doesn't have to be fancy. I bought a really basic one at StewMac, but it's nothing fancy. It's not even that powerful, maybe 40, 60 watts, something like that. We're not dealing with really large components here. That's fine. Solder, of course. Now, what I mean here by soldering aid is something that has either little clips or little arms that will help you hold components. Because, I mean, if you don't have that, you got to have a friend help you with certain awkward, wiring situations where you're trying to put two very small things together. Soldering aid will definitely help. Obviously, you're going to need a drill or a drill press or something to move those drill bits. Helpful things, so not completely necessary things, but helpful things, a multimeter, as I mentioned before, the step drill bit, an extra washer, size metric 12.7 by 1, M 12.7 by 1. That size was given to me directly by Jeff at Synthrotech, and I'll go into that just a little bit right now. Now, if you don't want to get an extra washer, then what you want to do is get a flush mount power jack. Why don't we just talk about it right now? In the Synthrotech kit, it comes with this DC jack. And if you just mount it as is, it totally works. It's fine. But all of these threads will stick out. So instead of being nice and flush mount, like I kind of modified to be so here, it's going to stick out like, over here. And according to my buddy Alex, who actually has a pedal board, I don't even use pedals, to be honest with you. That side to side space is just golden. So you want to keep this to a minimum. So either get another washer. I kind of made something up here. I had this extra plastic nut that didn't fit, and I just kind of filed away until it fit. And it looks pretty good, but probably a more proper way to do it would be to have another nut so you can tighten it up from this side and keep it from being loose over here. So that's an option. Oh, so they do sell power jacks where essentially this sort of generic power jack is reversed and these threads are on the inside. You don't have to fuss with using two nuts. I think maybe they're called something like low profile or flush mount DC jacks. They're pretty common. So these are the notes I had made on the Stomp Wizard content page they provide. Just cool little fact, all these wires are 22 gauge, but pretty much this whole pedal I use 22 gauge. The LED does not have a bezel. So when I ordered that violet LED from StewMac, I also got this bezel. You probably want to have some files on hand or a proper deburring tool, or even a countersink can be helpful. I actually ended up countersinking this hole, which is a regular number 6 countersink you'd use for wood screws, and that's an additional hole we did there for accessing this trim pot here. That's a gain trim pot, because Alex wanted to be sure that he could get to that with just a small jeweler's type screwdriver without having to open the case. So anyhow, especially when you're drilling these larger holes, you want to at least have a little small round file just to get to those edges and smooth them out so you don't have sharp edges. Okay, so obviously we went with this purple case. That's cool and it looks nice, but if you're going to use something like a water slide decal or a sticker, you'll have far better results if you use a white case or something lighter in color, maybe yellow, because it'll just pop more. It's a bit more difficult for it to pop against a dark background. This is pretty much the color we were going for, but it's actually the brightest yellow I could do in Photoshop. And so it's basically translucent. So that really, really bright yellow against this purple kind of made this faint gold color. But I have it well lit right here, so it looks pretty good. But in a more subdued environment, it's not as vibrant as you may want it to be. So there's a caveat there for going with the water slide. The other thing I wanted to mention, and that's what I'm talking about over here, case color, buy bare, then paint. Well, if you're going to buy something and it's already painted a nice color like this, you have to take great care when you're drilling holes and working with it. And you know, you're bound to get a scratch here or there. I don't think you can really see it on camera, but there's little bits of scratches here and there. It's not perfect because it's just, you know, it's kind of nature of the beast when you're drilling holes and, you know, using files and all of that. So it might be worth your time to just get the bare aluminum enclosure and then paint it as a very last step. Just pointing that out as an option. Now, I'm no spring chicken, so I recommend one of these too. Right? That's pretty hard to see. I don't really want to move the camera here, but this is basically one of those lighted LED visors. StewMac does sell one. Theirs is kind of expensive. There's really nothing that special about it. You can get the same one on Amazon. That one I got from Lee Valley, and it was a really good price. But any lighted magnifying visor will do. I forgot to mention this. Don't do what I did and purchase the wrong knob. So without getting into the complexities of knobs for potentiometers, what you're going to need here is a 1/4 inch or 6.35 millimeter knob, or rather it needs to fit a shaft of a 1/4 inch or 6.35 millimeter. I mistakenly got this one, which is actually for a 6 millimeter shaft, and that means I had to enlarge its hole. Okay, so let's get to the wiring. Since I really didn't know what I was doing, I asked Jerry over at JTEX how to wire this thing, and he sent me a link to this diagram, which I printed out. And it wasn't until much later that I realized, oh, he's not aware that I'm actually going to use the Stomp Wizard. And so this is kind of the concept I want you to understand. You can totally wire this pedal up, really any guitar pedal up, in this manner, and it will work. It just won't be as easy as if you use this little PCB, the Stomp Wizard PCB. But anyhow, you're definitely going to need, you know, stomp switch on the wire, a DC jack, 2 audio jacks. But what this does is essentially bring all the wiring into a central point. And then what you do here is you take this little guy and you just sort of insert it in there and then solder it all up. Here's another important concept. It does not matter how you insert the switch into these 9 holes. Really, it only goes in one way. You could put it in there in one of 2 ways, you could argue, but it really doesn't matter. Luckily, it's rectangular in shape. It's not exactly a square, so really there's only one way it goes. And the point of this type of switch is that either this row is on, or this row is on, or this row is on. So basically it's always flipping between this neutral state here and being either in a true bypass or with the circuit in. The next challenge, once I realized, okay, can't really use this circuit exactly as it is, I need to adapt it to this method of wiring it up centrally here. So what I did is I took this section and I wrote it out here so that I could then map out where all that stuff goes. So basically you're taking all the wiring and you're wiring it here, which means you're wiring it here. I chose to use the board like this so that the Stomp Wizard little guy is over here on the lower left. You don't need to do it that way. You can flip it. I mean, it doesn't really matter. All of this is all of this. It's fairly well labeled. There are some confusing things, like right off the bat, the DC jack, it says tip sleeve SW. And later I realized that this is basically the center negative, the tip, the sleeve. I guess you could argue that's a positive, I don't know, maybe. And then this really is only necessary to turn off the battery. So you don't even need to wire that up if you're not going to use the battery. So anyhow, let's just go through it. So these just happen to be the colors that I chose to wire with. Now, if you notice, we have green, yellow, red. And guess what? There's no yellow here. Well, I just happen to have yellow. So I just wanted to use all the colors I had. So if you see a color here that's not in the kit, then, substitute it with something that's in the kit, or just, obtain that color. You could use whatever color you want. I mean, theoretically, you could use the same exact color for all the wiring. I mean, you could make a pedal that just had all black wiring, but that would get confusing. So that's why we use colors. So why don't we just go clockwise with the circuit here, and then I'll try to point it out here. So another challenge is that the kit, it says, okay, yeah, it comes with the jack and this and that, but it doesn't really tell you what the pinouts are on the physical jacks. And I'll save you the trouble. I mean, I ended up using my multimeter in continuity mode and, figuring it out that way by plugging in a 1/4-inch cable and all this good stuff. But anyway, if your jack looks like this, and then we go back down here, well, I got that backwards, didn't I? So let's start with the power jack. So green, that's going to be the tip. Again, that's the center tip. So if you look here, and here, let me switch it like this better, so it kind of matches the picture that I'll show you in a sec. So there's kind of like a little L here, and like a weird little eyelet there. So that's green. And then going back down here, what they're calling the sleeve, that's yellow. And so that's going to be that one right there. Trying to get it to focus. And then this other one here, what they're calling the switch, so the battery switch, the one that switches the battery off when you have it plugged in, that would be that one. That kind of matches this here. So we have green being the center negative pin, and then we have yellow, which is essentially where the power's coming in, although they're calling it sleeve down over here. And then the red, which here in this diagram they're calling battery, but that actually means the switch for the battery. So that's red. Okay, so you can see how confusing this would be for somebody who has never, ever, ever built a pedal. So we have two audio jacks. This is the input, the stereo one, which has 3 points of contact. And then we have the mono one, which only has 2 points of contact. So let's kind of reverse that, just because I think it'll be easier. So like I started to say earlier, if this is how you orient the jack, then very simply, you're going to do green tip and yellow sleeve. Now on the stereo jack, I guess you could say it goes in the same order. Physically, you're going to do green, and then the one right next to it will be yellow, and then the one here will be red, which will be actually the ring. Again, green tip, yellow sleeve, green tip, red ring is over here on the outside, and then back to the middle for the yellow sleeve. So that covers this section here. Now, my buddy Alex didn't really need the battery, but I just hooked it up anyway because I was struggling with the LED. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And I just thought, well, I don't know, maybe the board just wants that to be soldered in, which I was totally wrong. But so those are pretty much automatically red and black because this battery clip already has the wires attached, red and black, just like you see here. So those are pretty basic. Those just go right in there, red and black. Now the LED, that's going to take, we're going to skip that because there's lots more detail to that. So I'm going to skip that section here. It should be straightforward. It should just be, you know, plugging in the longer side of the LED here and the shorter side here. So the longer side's positive. So the longer side, the LED, even in this picture, you can see they clearly have made this one longer. That's the positive side. And then the shorter side, you would put it into negative. But we'll get back to that. Now this part is confusing because on the board itself, you basically have these arrows. So out and in, and then voltage, plus, and ground. So what can be confusing about that, again, for a beginner like me, is does the out go to the out, or does the out go to the in of this circuit up here? And if we turn this way, you can see that Jerry's got these clearly labeled: ground, in, battery, which is really just power. I would have probably preferred it just said power, but anyway, battery, out, ground. There's two more way up here, but we don't need to worry about those because that's only where the reposition switch plugs in, and you don't need to worry about that. So that which I just pointed out is all of this. All of this. So basically, you want to view it from a global sort of view. You know, here we have power, here we have input, here we have output, here we have an optional battery, here we have the LED, and this section is really where you connect your actual circuit. So we happen to be building this pedal with this JTEX Distiller circuit, but if you were building, you know, a fuzz pedal, you know, this would be your fuzz circuit. So really these things I'm explaining can really apply to any pedal. In this particular case, we're going to be dealing with this JTEX Distiller circuit. The way I wired it up was you go out, out, so out of this Stomp Wizard board into the in, using this blue wire here, into the in, so here, into the in of the JTEX circuit. The next one is V plus, which is, you know, voltage, so that's your power. I made that one orange, so that orange cable goes up in there. And then you have your ground. Now here is another time, another instance where I had to contact Jerry. His board has two grounds, so I was a bit stumped. Well, which one do I need to plug in both, or which one do I use? So basically Jerry said, you know, unless you're building a very specific circuit that needs isolated grounds, you can use either ground. It doesn't matter. They're both connected anyway. So just use one of the grounds. So I have just a good old black ground going up into the board. And then the last one, I had this striped white and black wire that's bringing the circuit out of the JTEX back into the board. That's the last connection. The last connection here. So that really covers all the wiring. And again, just to reiterate, you don't need this little guy. But, you know, you can buy this board by itself for about $3. And for $3, you are doing yourself a disservice if you are not getting this little board, because you would, I mean, it's already a mess just because I chose to have it work instead of having it look good. But anyway, can you imagine what kind of a rat's nest this would look like if I didn't have everything centrally wired to this board? It would just be crazy. I mean, I'm really glad I ended up using it. Now, I did have a problem with one piece of this Stomp Wizard puzzle, and that's the LED. So let's talk about the LED. It could have been that I made a mistake when I first assembled the circuit. Actually, the first time I turned it on, it worked perfectly. I mean, the audio worked perfectly. The switch worked, the potentiometer worked, everything worked great, but the LED wouldn't come on. One mistake I made, just being a beginner, was I left the LED leads bare like this. I really, really recommend taking these leads and splicing in a red wire for the positive and some black wire for the negative. Just splice it in and put some heat shrink over it. You definitely don't want to lose track of what's positive. And also, you don't want these bare wires just hanging around willy-nilly in the case. That might have been what I did. I don't know. I don't think I had them touching anything, but anyway, long story short, I could not get the LED to function with plugging it in here. These, you know, the plus minus here. Better, we look at it here. This, I couldn't get it to function there, or I couldn't get it to function there either. These are connected, so you could use either location. By the way, you probably want to put your resistor here. Kind of didn't really pay attention to this section before I wired it the way I wired it. Since I couldn't get this to work properly, I basically used my multimeter to probe for that 9-volt switch, which ended up being here on the number 3A here. And I just kind of wrapped this around and soldered it. And I just put my resistor in line there. I just happen to use blue heat shrink, and that's my note here. On the plus side, which is actually the red wire, I used blue heat shrink. And then now the minus, I was able to use the minus here. So if you're having a hard time getting the LED to work, then in a sense we're kind of going back to this diagram and bypassing the Stomp Wizard, and we're just wiring it here. It's kind of a, I don't know, kind of a bodge, I guess. Is that the right word? That's my little improvisation. So wiring it there works. And what that accomplishes is when the circuit is on and you hit this guy, when the JTEX is active, the light goes on, as opposed to the LED being on when you power up the pedal. That's not as useful. I definitely prefer that when you engage the audio, the light goes on. That's pretty much it as far as the wiring is concerned. I think we should hear what it does, right? Jerry does a pretty good demo, and I'll link that below. We're going to do something a little different with our demo because I have a bass with a Q filter circuit, and now we have a pedal that has a 3-position Q filter circuit. So I think you see where I'm going with this. Oh yeah, totally forgot. The area LTD, since it is a proper Alembic circuit, I found out that you can purchase from Alembic, they call it the 3-position Q switch pre-wired for activator base model. It's $60, about $6-7 shipping. So I bought that. We're not going to go through this. I haven't installed it yet, but I just want to show it to you. So I'm actually going to convert my LTD to a 3-position Q switch. And there's a nice little how-to here. I haven't really dived into that yet, but I just wanted to show it to you. So here it is. So it happens to be black. Nice, high quality part. And look at this case. I mean, look at how pretty is that? And yeah, I don't know if you noticed over here, but look at that. Put a smiley face on it. Isn't that nice? And gave me some stickers. Look at that. Woo! Stickers! Alright, let's see if we can have a little fun playing this beast. Just check my notes. I'm sure I forgot to mention some other tools you might need, but if you're thinking about building a pedal, you kind of have a pretty good idea of some of the other things you might need, like screwdrivers and all that kind of stuff. All right, I'll just pan over so that you get a better shot of some of this stuff. Oh yeah, totally forgot. When you get the circuit, the JTEX Distiller, this was actually, this is very important. It is built to be a drop-in replacement for Alembic basses. So it is pre-installed. Well, you can't see them anymore, but it is pre-installed here and over here with Molex KK254 connectors. I contacted Jerry and he said basically if you can't get your hands on those, and believe me, it's a bit difficult, you know, if you're not already in that world to go that route. He said just remove them. A little bit tricky to remove because it really helps if you have, you know, somebody with applying some pulling action while you're holding soldering iron to the solder and kind of pulling it out. But anyway, I was able to do it by myself. So yeah, remove those Molex KK254 connectors so that basically you just have the holes and you just stick the wires in the holes just like you basically did over here. You'll definitely need some flush cut, gosh, I'm blanking out on what you call them, but some flush cut snips for getting your solders, your soldering, I'm losing it. All right, let's test this setup out. Now, first, we're not going to have the pedal in whatsoever. We're just going to listen to the LTD's circuit. So I'm going to turn it all the way down. Both pickups are on full, so neck and bridge together. Q filter all the way down. And let's get a little rhythm going. And as I advance the Q filter, you'll hear it open up. Now I'll try to advance it like in 25% increments, something like that. Okay, here we go. Let's move it up. Okay, a little bit more. It's going to really open up now. 2, 3. Now full up, full brightness. So that gives you an idea of a little bit of finger style. I'm feeling in a Larry Graham kind of mood. Let's try something else. Again, I'll filter all the way to the bottom. Let's open it up. A little bit more. All the way. why don't we? 1, 2. Oh, wait. Start all the way at the bottom. Here we go. A little more open up. More. All the way up. There you go. Now, when I tried this earlier to make sure my setup was working, I discovered something quite obvious, but it was a rather happy accident. I hooked this up backwards, because guess what happens when you put the circuit in? You start it all the way at the bottom. 1, 2, 3. What? That's low. That's the low. Low Q. I don't think that's the right way to say it, but that's the most neutral one. Watch, listen. Toggling it on and off. Subtle difference. It's there, but not as big of a difference as this. Watch. That's bypassed. Let's take it to the extreme. Put it on high. Hear that? That's high resonance. Let's go to mid. A little bit of a bark, but not as much as high. It's fun though. And then low is pretty neutral. It still colors it a bit, but when engaged, of course. I mean, in bypass, it's bypassing. It's true bypass, as they say. Okay, now let's have some fun before I hook this back up the correct way, okay? Awesome, you hear that cymbal? Aha, I can do that all night. Isn't that fun? So, yes, I'm going to swap this around so that we can compare the LTD's circuit to the A2Z circuit, the distiller, the JTEX Distiller circuit. Okay, time to swap it around. Be back. I have updated the wiring, so we're going into the pedal first, this pedal first, and then into the drum. That's a funky name, but a cool little box anyway. By the way, this is really my first time using this Art USB Mix 4. It's really cool. I have this hooked into my phone, which is here, I'm tapping it, which is a single USB cable. It's being powered by a single USB-C cable going straight into the phone. So we have a distiller going into a distiller. And we're going to start, I really need to think about this because it gets tricky. Okay, pedals off, and I'm just going to hold a whole note on the G string. And you can't see me do it, but I'm going to be moving the Q filter up and down. Here we go. So there's a little bit of that wah effect, but not too much. My theory is that if I engage the pedal and I leave this full up, so on the LTD, the filter is all the way up, so full brightness, that I can then compare this. So we're going to do the same thing here. We're on the low Q. I got this all the way up, and let's see what this sounds like. So I hear a little bit less of that wah sort of thing happening. Let's try it in the mid location. So that one sounds close. Let's try the LTD on its own now. So that may prove that the LTD's circuit, since it doesn't have the 3-position switch, is probably based on this mid setting. Let's try one more test with double stops. So let's disengage the pedal, and same thing, pickups on full, and let's play a double stop. Now I'm going to engage the pedal, leave it in mid, do that again. I think I had hit it a little harder though. Let's try that again. Disengage again. So I think the resonant peak, the Q-ness of it all, is very similar, if not the same, and we're just hearing a slight volume boost. Let's try to prove that. So yes, there's definitely a volume boost. The trim pot is set to its lowest setting. If you recall from the beginning of the video, I had drilled a hole to be able to stick a small screwdriver in there, and so that you can mess with the trim pot without taking the cover off, the back cover off. So anyway, even at the lowest setting, there's still a bit of a boost, which could be helpful. So just wanted to mention A2Z or AQZ. That's Alex's idea. That's basically, well, you can either read it as AQZ, which is appropriate because it's kind of covering your tone, you know, low to high, Q filter. Now, we have a side project going on, Alex and I, and we called it A2Z. I'll be debuting one of the musical numbers we've done soon. So yeah, that was sort of a clever way to encompass both of those ideas. Everything about this pedal is bespoke to what Alex needed in his pedal board. Some things were a compromise because of the size of the pedal. We could have gone with the larger pedal, but then for somebody that has a lot of pedals on their pedal board, smaller is definitely advantageous, I've been told. We have power over here. We have the LED on the side, not blinding you in the eye, also giving you this cool lighting effect to whatever you have to the left there. Large knob here so that you can hit it with your big toe. Gingerly move it up and down with your sneaker, I suppose. So why would you build yourself a pedal like this? Well, for several reasons. First of all, there's no way to get this Alembic filter sound without having an Alembic or possibly an area LTD like this that has one of the Q filters in it. I believe the Alembic basses that have these filters would have one for each pickup for even greater versatility. But anyway, like I said, I'm not an Alembic expert, so I'm not sure about that. If you want to have that Q filter, if you want to have that kind of a circuit, this is really the only way to do it unless you're going to spend a bunch of money on an Alembic rack. I don't remember the name of it, but there's a 2-channel sort of dual filter thing they have. Maybe the SF2? Yeah, I think it's the Alembic SF2, but I mean, you're talking a lot more money than a couple $100 is going to take you to build this. And if you have, you know, a particularly bright bass, maybe like a Stingray, or, you know, even this bass, even the LTD, I mean, it can get pretty sizzly. These Alembic pickups, they're super clear. So it's really helpful to have the Q filter in this type of a circuit. I just gotta say one last thing though. These demos don't really do it justice because when you're playing around with the pedal like this, it changes the way you play. It changes the way you feel about the notes that you're hitting. So let's say you're grooving along, right? Here, we'll keep it on mid. I'll have to remember to use this, not the control on my bass. It's so confusing. Okay. Let's say I'm grooving along and here, let's put it in the middle. And then I think, you know what? Feeling like a little more fundamentals. And let's just go all bass. 1, 2. I'm just messing around, but yeah, so it goes far beyond the standard passive tone control. It's just a different animal, and I'm tired. This is taking all day. I hope that what I've shown helps any future builders out there. Have a good night. Bye-bye.